All right. What up? What up, fellas? I've had a long weekend. I don't know about you,
Oh
Danny,
yeah.
but I slept in a tent this entire weekend. So I'm a little exhausted, but we are still Dynasty degenerates. And of course, on my way home, I started thinking about some, theories, pontificating about value and all that kind of stuff that sickos like me do. So I figured
Yeah.
we would go live, talk about a Dynasty Superflex startup mock draft, and do so with you guys. We did drop the link to the mock draft in the chat. If you guys want to join up, we will get that started as soon as the mock draft, or as soon as the draft fills. It is going to be a 12-team Dynasty Superflex mock PPR, 1.5 tight end premium. So we'll get that rolling as soon as people file in. It's starting to
Yep.
fill up at the moment.
Put it
Andrew
in
is
the
actually the
Discord as
first
well.
one here. I'll let you go ahead. You haven't said a word yet.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. I just said I put it in the Discord as well. So if you guys are in our Discord over on Flock Fantasy, it should be available there. And of course, if you're in the live chat right now, you'll see it. But would you trade away AJB, ETN, and a 24 mid to late first for Jamar and Javonte? 324 first in total, and Burrow for the stack. We were kind of talking about this off stream, and for us personally, it's like at face value, I think it's fair. It just kind of depends on what your risk tolerance would be in this scenario with Javonte. Because the way we kind of worked it out is AJB plus ETN for the more or less is going to be Jamar Chase. Because the way I look at it is AJB 2 first, ETN 1 first, maybe a first and a second, and then obviously you equate that to Jamar, who we have at about 3 to 3.5 first evaluation. So then at that point, it comes down to 24 mid to late first for Javonte. If that's your first and you're gonna go compete and you're projecting that more so in like the 109, 110 area, I don't mind making this move. But if there's a chance this goes to like the 106 or the 107, I do have a little bit of pause. But then again, because we're defaulting back, you are acquiring Jamar. I personally would be more willing to make this move.
Yeah, I mean, I would maybe continue to finagle your deal a little bit if you can take ETN out of the deal and put in a lesser asset, or maybe he'll do it for AJ Brown in the first for Jamar straight up. I'd be willing to do that instead. It's kind of just like a smidge too much for me, but like I again, when you're trading for an elite asset, sometimes you do have to give a smidge too much to even get them, right? Because they're
Yeah.
very difficult to acquire. So do need 2 more people into the draft. Again, the link is in the chat, link is in the Discord. Make sure to join up in there. Pionio, what's going on? Bobcat, what's up? Nate
Doing well,
says,
boys.
damn good day when the boys go live. How we doing? We're doing good. We're doing good. Pionio's got a question off the top here. 10-team Superflex, start 10, send Mahomes, Devontae. I don't know if that's Adams or Smith because it's spelled like halfway in between
Halfway
both of their
between
names.
each.
Yeah.
For purpose, let's assume that
I think that's
is
Smith, personally.
Let's assume that it's Devonte Smith, given how it's written. Honestly, how would you kind of evaluate this? Because I guess it fully
I'm taking
depends
Burrow and Jamar here, I think.
Well, that's the thing. I guess it fully depends on like what you think the difference between Mahomes and Burrow would be. Because
Not much
obviously,
for me.
see, for me, I do view a little bit of a tier there. Like I personally would need probably a first evaluation. So basically, if you're taking the first evaluation off,
He's at Adams, by the way, too.
oh, it's Devontae Adams. Okay, then yeah, I would probably go with the Burrow and Jamar side then.
All right.
Because if I'm going to make this type of deal, I want younger assets.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like the draft has filled up as well,
Yep.
so we can get that going.
Randomize
Here
it
we
up.
go. Share my screen.
You know
All
how
right.
to randomize it?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Draft settings.
Yep. Draft order.
Randomized
Yes,
teams.
sir.
All right, I'm at
And
the 112. Here we go. All
I'm
right,
at the
like I said,
108.
anybody who's just joining the stream here, rules are at the top of the screen there. 12 teams, Superflex, PPR, 1.5 tight end premium. Let's get this going. It's gonna be a minute clock. Nobody get fired.
Press zoom twice in the top right corner just so they can see the board better, and then we're all perfect. Should be one more. Yeah, that's perfect.
I won't show my team if I do that.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. By the way, on top of this question, hypothetically, if this was Mahomes, Drake London in the first, like, are you doing that?
No, probably not.
No. Like, what would the wide receiver tipping point need to be on the Mahomes side for you to consider the deal? Would it have to be Garrett Wilson?
No, I would take the Mahomes side if it was London. Sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay, fair enough.
If that was Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf or worse though, then I would take the Burrow and Jamar side. Because like the way I look at it is Devontae Adams or Devontae Smith, whoever, like even if you threw Smith in there, who would be the tipping point for me,
Yep.
Devontae Smith in a first would still not be enough to make up the difference between Burrow and Mahomes and Jamar, and obviously that package, because
Yeah.
Jamar is worth more than Devontae Smith in a first, in my opinion.
That's fair. By the
And
way,
Burrow and Mahomes to me are worth like a
a
late first
first.
in maximum too. Like
Ah,
realistically, they're the same age. They're both elite passing quarterbacks that don't run a super ton. And Burrow is about to have an extension that insulates him the way Mahomes is insulated.
that's fair. By the way, so I'm I'm on the clock here, and this looks like a typical FSC room. You do see 7 quarterbacks right off the rip.
Right in my veins.
Amen. This is how drafts should be conducted. I swear I always take J Jeff here, and I do have him ranked as my highest ranked wide receiver. But let's spice it up. I'll go Jamar this time because quite literally they are back to back in my rankings, and I don't think I ever build Jamar teams in our mock drafts.
Yeah, this is the rules are at the top left corner there, Jamie. It is Dynasty, Superflex, PPR, 1.5 tight end premium. So, and it's Superflex, like I said, as well. As you can tell by the board.
Yep.
Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, and Dynasty. These guys are like perma-linked just because they were in the same draft class. They were like exact same tier of prospects.
Yeah.
Both of them have had their ups and downs. Bateman due to injury concerns. Elijah Moore kind of like situation and quarterback play, that kind of thing. I tend to think that one of these guys will hit and one of them will miss. Like that's kind of where my head's at. And if I had to put a bet down, I would say Elijah Moore hits and Bateman misses, but I wouldn't be shocked. Like, I mean, I talked about Bateman on Friday's video of why he's such a hard player to rank because a third-year wide receiver, like there used to be a time when being a third-year wide receiver mattered, but we've been so spoiled by all these young receivers breaking out in their rookie seasons and in their second seasons that we forget that this actually was normal at one point. Like Rashad Bateman's career trajectory. When he's been on the field and healthy, he's been pretty good. He's been able to command targets, and I'm actually on the clock right now, so I'm going to take care of that first. I'm actually going to, I mean, knowing the room, the quarterback position's going pretty heavy. I might pull a little different strat here.
You going CD or going to quarterback? That's pretty much the decision point for you here.
Yeah. And if I were to go a quarterback, it would probably be Prescott because I have a running back on my roster, so I don't really want to go with a young quarterback here. I'm gonna mess around and go Lamb here. I wouldn't typically go with this. I just kind of want to see how it plays out and see where the pockets of quarterbacks are gonna be because I'm obviously gonna be behind the 8 ball given that all of you guys except for Danny and Cat Stafford have a quarterback on their roster.
By the way, go figure the heaviest like quarterback people. Like I swear we've been harping on just smashing quarterbacks early in your startups like for the last 2 years, and now we're 2 of the only 3 people who don't have a quarterback thus far.
Yeah, if this was a real draft, realistically, I'm probably not doing this. But like, this is what mock drafts are for. You want to test in case if I'm in a quarterback heavy room, what happens if I kind of reserve myself to, my running backs, my wide receivers are going to make up the bulk of my points. And I'm going to supplement quarterback production through an aging option like Geno Smith or Jared Goff or whatever. And then maybe take some upside swings and build like a 4 quarterback core. Cause like, I think if I built out a team like this, if I have Bijan and CeeDee Lamb, maybe later on I grab a Kirk Cousins and then I grab a Jared Goff as like my second quarterback. What I'd probably be inclined to do is, swing for the fences on Will Levis and Brock Purdy or Will Levis and Sam Howell or maybe Trey Lance if you're into Trey Lance. Like, because I think if you can hit on one of those guys, you're going to make up so much value because the rest of your roster is already going to be really good because you're taking running back and wide receiver value. And then if you also then hit on a quarterback that eventually works his way into this area of the draft, then you're going to have a much better team because I think when you think about it rationally, quarterbacks do have the highest value accumulation potential. So it almost kind of does make sense to fade them if you can, like if you can afford to, if the room is going to go really heavy and then let them fade. But yeah, that sucks for you.
I really wanted Kyler Murray there, but I mean, I am perfectly fine with option 2. Bryce Young is a guy I have ranked in, I believe, inside my top 15, if not right on the surface. All I know is he's in the mid-second round area for me. I'm not sure exactly right now where that is. I think it's 15th overall, and getting him here at the 205, like, yeah, Kyler would have been the absolute nuts here, but I will take Bryce, and I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, in a real draft, I 100% would have taken Kyler Murray, so he wouldn't have even been there. Traded Ridley for a 2025 first, second, and 24 second.
Wow.
Probably all mid to late. What do you think? I mean, I love Ridley, but that's a great return for a 29-year-old wide receiver who very well, could experience some rust, growing pains. Maybe he's not the same player. Like, we don't exactly know. He also, I'm not exactly sure if it was directly related to the gambling situation, but the like mental health break he took, like maybe that doesn't go, maybe that, pops up again at some point in his career. We don't exactly know. So from a dynasty perspective, he might be a tad risky of a hold, but I do think
Yeah,
the reward is, I mean, like, I love the reward of holding him, but if I can get 2 2s and a 1 for him, that's definitely a good package.
for sure. How high should Pitts be going in a 2 tight end premium dynasty league? So if we're mapping it out right now, I would honestly say you put the quarterbacks ahead of him. I think
Right where
personally,
Kelsey went is probably exactly where you should
I
go.
in a 2 tight end premium, I would probably take him over any wide receiver like past Lamb, Jefferson, and Chase.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could definitely make the argument that that you could take Wilson or AJ over him. I think he would probably be
Yeah.
right in that territory with those guys.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I mean, we're talking as like people that are higher on Pitts because I do think that in some more casual leagues, like people are still scared of him. And I mean, even in this room right now, like as much as I like the point production Kelsey's going to give you, like getting Kyle Pitts at 23 years old at the 301, I think is just great value there personally.
Yeah, well, I got him at the 212 in a startup, in the can't wait startup, and I thought it was just obscene value in a tight end premium.
Yeah,
And
that's
obviously
crazy.
he fell due in part to the fact that we were drafting midseason, and there was actually a half pot for the midseason champion, and he was hurt. He was on IR and he was out for the year, so that kind of played a factor. But yeah, I think Pitts in a 2 tight end premium might be one of the bigger values to spot because I think people don't really know how to adjust for tight end premium properly, and B, Pitts is just undervalued in general.
Yeah, no, I agree there.
I tend to think Elijah would be the one to hit just because I've seen more sustained production from Elijah Moore versus Rashad Bateman, but I actually do kind of like both of them as like swings, especially if you're a rebuilder and you got like this year's draft is a perfect example because when we got to like the 202, 203, 204 and rookie drafts this year, the players weren't great. So if you wanted to have swapped one of those picks for those guys straight up, I would have been fine taking the upside swing on them because knowing that the dynasty community was once high on them means that they can be convinced again. If Elijah Moore and Rashad Bateman go out there and have a wide receiver 21 in points per game season, they're going to be probably top 15 to 20 dynasty receivers.
Take this for what it's worth. It's probably not worth a ton. But if right now I had to make a prediction going into the year, I think one of them is going to be a 1,000, 1,100 yard type of wide receiver. Whether it's going to be Elijah Moore operating as that number 2 weapon in a Deshaun Watson offense and Deshaun Watson ends up playing up to his potential, or rather if it's Rashad Bateman also becoming the number 2 target, but the number 1 overall wide receiver in his offense for a quarterback we already know has the ceiling to be one of the best players in all of football with Lamar Jackson. I mean, we saw the 2019 ceiling. The guy literally led the league both in terms of rushing ability. Like I believe he didn't lead the league in pure rushing yards, but in terms of rushing efficiency, he was up there with every single other player in the league. And he also threw 37 touchdowns that year, Lamar.
Yeah, no, he was outrageous.
So if you're getting I was just gonna say, if you're getting the wide receiver 1 for a quarterback, that yes, like typically you would kind of label him as a rushing guy, but if he's giving you 30 plus passing touchdowns, you're all for that. By the way, sorry, I had to rush because I am on the clock. Drake London is going to be my pick. It'd be between him and Jahmyr Gibbs, but I do think taking the wide receiver keeps me a little bit more flexible in case I don't have to rely upon Bryce Young's point production as soon as year 1. Because if you take Gibbs, you kind of have to compete towards trying to contend in year 1.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. What's Kenny Pickett's dynasty value? I have 2 teams that are interested in him, and I'm not totally sold on Pickett, so I'm open to selling. For me, I think he's probably, in terms of rookie pick,
Late 1.
if a contender's looking to buy him, maybe they have Kyler or something. They're trying to get some production to get him by. I think a late first would be enough for me to move off of Kenny Pickett. But it depends on the room. Like if quarterbacks don't have a ton of value, especially guys like Kenny Pickett who haven't really proven a ton, you might be only being offered, mid seconds or something like that, and vice versa. If quarterbacks are really, if it's 2 quarterback league or whatever, maybe he demands a first and a second because he's a young quarterback. Yeah. I would say he's definitely really interesting, and I would say generally speaking, around a first round pick is about where I would value him.
Yeah, no, that's probably where I'd put it as well. Like, for example, I think in my rankings, like him and Levis are pretty much in the same tier for me. And I believe Levis is my 110. So you do the math there. Let's just say hypothetically, you prefer Pickett mostly on your league market to a guy like Will Levis. If you equate that out, that's about the 109 in terms of value, aka like a guy like Zay Flowers. What are you feeling?
Sorry, I was just making my
You're
picks
good.
here. So again,
Good picks.
I kind of had to make a decision there where, like, with Bijan as my pick in the first round, you kind of are semi pigeonholed into competing. I mean, he's a 21-year-old running back. So if you had to 1 year punt, he'd be fine. But at the same time, I think kind of knowing the wide receiver value that was falling to me, I could have probably went with Cup and Diggs or whatever, but I'm not 100% sold on Cup and Adams. Had Tyreek been there and I could have gone with Tyreek and Diggs, that obviously would have been great. But I feel like I can probably wait on my QBs. There's still plenty of win now guys that I could have gone with. I don't honestly view a huge tier difference. Some people do between
Agreed.
Daniel Jones and the rest of the guys, but Daniel Jones to me is not a significant amount more valuable than Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, and Kenny Pickett and those dudes. So for me, I'll probably just wait on quarterback. Maybe I can double tap him at 5-12 and 6-1 or something.
Agree with you there. By the way, I actually saw this comment from Henry, and I think this is fascinating because he says we did a startup last year, and 6 running backs went in the top 21. Taylor, Javonte, Najee, CMC, Swift. Oddly enough, I think at least 3 of these guys we were mentioned as our biggest fades video. I know at least Taylor and Najee were. I'm pretty sure.
Well, I mean, even Javonte, we love Javonte, but
We
not
love
at the 203.
Yeah, no, not at the 203, but it's just funny that we're looking at this now, and it's like, to be fair, I think we were a little bit of ahead of the curve of the natural room back then anyways, and B, now we have so much more data, so much more information available, and we're starting to see it kind of materialize in the markets, because even though we knew back then, or the general Dynasty consensus knew back then, that taking the wide receiver, taking the quarterbacks was your better bet, the allure of the running back still kind of existed. I do think the allure, given what materialized in the 2022 season, has made it so that running backs are as a less glamorous type of position. And that sees the effect in terms of redraft. You look at redraft specifically, and the running back texture back then versus the running back texture now is night and day.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's only going to end up being 4 or 5 running backs going in most like semi-sharp draft rooms in the first round of redraft leagues versus, I'm sure casual leagues will still take a shit ton of running backs, but at the same time, it's even the semi-sharp, like mid kind of skill level leagues are starting to catch up a little bit to the ability, because like I would consider some of the leagues that I've played in as league markets like that, and I know they're like very high on the receiver position. Like I'm surprised I'm hearing some of my home league guys and some of the more casual players too, not even just like the guys that know what they're doing. They're like, I want Jefferson at 1, I want Chase at 2. I'm like, it's pretty crazy that they're even thinking it.
It is wild, just like the perception of the running back position, and that's why I'm still glad that like we did our research ahead of time, and we kind of like, again, I'm not like saying we were the only ones. So there's a bunch of analysts that were able to pick up on that, but I'm glad that we adapted to the new information and adapted our strategy around it right off the bat. Then even a few years ago, you look at us a few years ago, and we were really, really people that believed in the philosophy that you needed running backs early because, quote unquote, the wide receiver position is so plentiful. But I mean, that's proven to be a complete falsity, and it's just more so more so a question of whether you can stomach working for your RB2. Because back then it was like, I just want to fill it and have it done. Whereas nowadays people are like, well, listen, this is a very replaceable position where if I'm not getting one of the top 8 overall players at the running back position on a year-on-year basis, I may as well just wait for my James Conner types. I may as well just wait for my Ramondre Stevenson types. I may as well just wait for whatever hot name I can get in round 9, round 10, round 11 to supplement the same position, supplement the same point production that you're taking in round 4. Obviously, the landscape, the market as a whole has shifted, because we are seeing now the quote unquote running back dead zone from years past now, and I'm sure you're going to touch upon it soon as well, now is starting to look a little bit more glamorous, a little bit more high than we typically see. It's not a typical Mike Davis going in the 4th now. It's more so like, oh, you're getting like Aaron Jones now in the 4 or 5 turn. You know what I mean?
You're getting like potentially the goal line back for the Kansas City Chiefs in the 6th round with Isaiah Pacheco. Like it's pretty crazy. I think this year more so than any, like, strategies, throw them out the window. Like, I honestly think it's going to come down more so to player evaluation. Obviously, construction wise, you don't want to like leave the first 7 rounds with 4 running backs on your team. But as far as when to take certain positions, I have 100% confidence that all the studies that I'm going to end up doing over the next like month or 2 are going to lead me to the conclusion. It's just like, I'm just going to take the best projection. Like, it's not going to have anything to do with position. It's like, I'm on the board at the 2-3 turn. If a running back is the best projection, it's going to be a running back that I pick. If it's a wide receiver, it's going to be a wide receiver that I pick. Whereas last year and 2 years ago, especially, I think it was a little bit more cut and dry. The rounds 3, 4, 5, 6 area was a lot better wide receiver projections than running back projections. But this year, we've seen the market. I don't want to say overcorrect. I think it's almost correct. I think the market is correct. I think it's evaluating the high end running backs highly, and then the lower to mid end RB1s are valued in the 2-3 area where they should be.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad you mentioned that because hypothetically, I mean, let's look at a micro player name and kind of discuss of where he would be going now versus where he's going.
Ramondre Stevenson
last year
would be a back end first round pick probably 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and he's typically available at the end of the second round, early third round.
Yeah, and on the inverse, a guy that may be propped up now in ADP relative to where he was going a couple years ago. I think a guy like Devontae Smith, people
Garrett
would
Wilson
be more.
too. Garrett Wilson would so remember when Chris Godwin was like a guaranteed breakout candidate in 2019? He was like a 4th round pick, and people still then were like, that's too high. And I guess Garrett Wilson has proven a little bit more than Chris Godwin had to that point in his career, but I think the point still stands that Garrett Wilson would have been a 3rd round pick back then.
Yeah, and I think another name that makes sense for it too would be a guy like Devontae Smith, where he's an early 3rd round pick, and I can bet you a couple years ago, people would have been like, do we really want the wide receiver 2 on a team that's not going to throw the ball a lot? He should be no higher than a late 4th round pick. Like, I could see that exact argument being made for someone in 2020 fantasy football, which it's crazy. Again,
T. Higgins was like a 6th round pick Jamar Chase's rookie year.
Yeah, I remember that.
Even though we kind of knew that he was like, and the other thing too is we didn't know Chase was going to be that as good as he was. Like if Chase had missed a step at all, like if he had looked at all like a rookie receiver, we might have been talking about T. Higgins as an absolute league winner, and he was still really good, even with Chase on the field. So yeah, I think even just in 2 years, it's kind of corrected itself pretty well.
For sure. By the way, I'm on the clock here, and it may feel a little bit early. I think there's such a flat tier of quarterback. I could probably wait for my quarterback 2 here. Thought about taking one there, though, I will say. Running backs, I mean, you got I don't like Najee at this point. Maybe Ramondre or Pollard. Wide receivers. Oh, I mean, I still see Calvin Ridley here, so I'm going to just take Calvin Ridley.
Yeah. Henry says, did you guys see Underdog open up a Superflex puppy yesterday? I did 9 of them before the ADP could cement. And yes, ADP in Superflex leagues is really fascinating on Underdog just because it's not traditionally a Superflex platform. So people kind of go all over the place with it. But yeah, definitely. If you guys have Underdog accounts, go check out that contest. Brendan says, what should we be looking for in Dynasty for Mike Williams in a 1 quarterback PPR league? In a 1 quarterback league, I think I would want close to a late first. I don't think you're going to get that, though, is the problem. Mike Williams seems to be like a notoriously undervalued player to the point that if I was contending, I would say he's actually a pretty good buy at this point in time, because I think you're almost locked in like top 24 production for an offense that, we expect to throw at amongst the highest in the league with an elite quarterback, hopefully with an offensive line that can stay healthy this year. So Mike Williams, yeah, I think his production is worth about a late first, especially in a 1 quarterback format where it's not as valuable of a pick, but you might not get that. I don't think somebody's going to give you a late first. I traded him away last offseason for a late first, but he's another year older. His contract has an out in it, I believe, after this year. So some people might not be willing to give up more than an early second, although I do think he's actually worth a late first.
Yep. No, I would agree with you there. I'm going to be, again, we've talked about it off script as well, but I'm going to be higher on Mike Williams. And we had kind of, quote unquote, the semi argument on the Underdog stream about Quentin Johnson, but that just kind of shows my thoughts on this offense as a whole. I think it's going to be an extremely high valuable, high volume passing offense. I think the team is going to probably threaten for, dare I say, 700 passing attempts, because they threw 699 last year, and that was with an unhealthy wide receiver core. Keenan Allen missed time. Josh Palmer had games where he had 10-plus targets. Mike Williams obviously missed time in his own right. If their wide receiver core stays healthy, and now you have a young offensive coordinator there in Kellen Moore again, I was able to see this guy firsthand. He's got some good schematic advantages that he'll bring to the offense. Is he a little bit stubborn at adjusting against elite defenses at times? Sure, but for the majority of it, could it be a similar effect to what Mike McDaniel had on the Dolphins, only you're dealing with a top 4 overall quarterback in Justin Herbert than a have-to-prove-it type of quarterback, which is what Tua represented going into the year? Absolutely. So for me personally, you're getting the Chargers, you're getting high volume in terms of passing opportunity, and you're getting potentially a 40 touchdown year from Justin Herbert, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to with my picks that I just made there. I wanted to go potentially with like a double tap at quarterback, but I honestly see like a bit of a flat tier. The guy that actually stood out to me was Kenny Pickett being a
I
guy that's
like
a
that.
little bit younger. I figure if I spend up a little bit more on my quarterback 3 and get a guy that can help me compete, I can kind of let Pickett develop if I needed to with this kind of team. Although I might be a little bit hamstrung at wide receiver, so hopefully at my 7 and my 8 pick, I can potentially make one there. But like at the wide receiver position, I didn't really love the tier either. It kind of is like a flat tier of Pittman and Debo
Yeah.
and some of these younger guys. I just didn't see a whole lot of distinction between any position group, even running back too, like Harris, Chubb, Henry, Dobbins, and like Pierce and all those guys. They kind of blended together from that perspective. So I, I I just didn't love the board there at that point in time. Honestly, I probably would have traded up or down if it was a real draft.
Uh,
Uh, what do we got here? Mark
I'm
says Chase for T Higgins, Damian Pierce, 2 firsts and a second. I'll take the package there. Higgins.
yeah.
All right, so I'm guessing that's Higgins or Damian Pierce, but I would take
T
Higgins.
T.
Yeah, so I would do Higgins in the 2 1s and the 2. I think Higgins a first and a second is probably about equal to Chase, give or take.
Probably two
Uh,
firsts in a lot of leagues, but like that would be like the type of because I do find for those like type of franchise type of assets, you typically have to overpay quite a little bit just to make them want to part with their package. If
yeah,
that
I
makes
mean, he
sense, or
says he
part with
has
their
CD and Chase and doesn't
asset.
want to break up the duo, but that is a very strong haul, I would say.
By the way, I don't want to do this, but am I gonna have to take Najee in a startup
I
mock?
guess so.
Like I don't want to, but
Love anchoring your running back core with
God,
Najee Harris. Noted Najee Harris
gross.
enjoyer, Danny Ladd.
I mean, you sniped either of the quarterbacks I was gonna take at that point
Oh, well,
for
yeah, I
what
was
might
glad
be
you
missed.
said that because I knew I was going to
Yeah.
go 2 quarterbacks at my pick.
All right.
Traded Swift in a third for Chubb. Yeah, I think this is a
That's
smart
fine.
trade.
Yeah.
Honestly, some people might look at this and be like, Swift is young, like he's the better asset long term. Dude, if you're
Yeah.
investing in any running back, they better be productive, and Chubb is productive.
That's the thing with him, right? It's like, yeah, you see the upside given the pass utilization. Obviously, he's been an efficient pass catcher in his career, but realistically, it's like, does he have maybe a higher ceiling long term? Sure, but Nick Chubb is going in the top 7 of the running back position right now in terms of underdog ADP. And if you're trading for a running back and you're trading a running back to do so, you're probably competing. So that third round pick isn't going to be a needle mover for you. Yeah, sure, a year's time Swift may be worth more on the open market than Nick Chubb. But if Nick Chubb's the RB6 overall this year and you potentially win your championship because of it, and Swift is like the RB14 on a high end type of projection, you're taking that deal any day of the week because of the production value.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that Swift is in the same territory of Trey Lance for me, where it's like the all mythological upside team, where like I don't know if either of them ever actually achieved the ceiling that people still think they have. So for me, I think I would just rather have Chubb, who actually has a very solid projection.
Yeah, you just did not have to group Trey Lance into that at
I,
all,
I
but
think they're the same type of player though, because
they
both
are.
guys are like the Dynasty and Devi Darling like guys that everybody was so excited about, and yeah, both of them theoretically, if they hit their ceiling, have a high ceiling. But I think at this point in their careers, they would have hit it already. Is my point for both guys.
I mean, it's a completely different situation.
Not yeah, maybe. But anyways, Cooper
uh,
at the 7-3 is a great value. I really
yeah,
hope that
that's
all
good
these
value
wide
there.
receivers don't just like get rinsed off the board before my pick because I'm hoping I can get 2 good ones still at my next pick.
Knowing the FSE room, probably at least 7 more going off the board between you and your pick.
Yeah. I mean, there's some decent backs on the board still too.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. Where do we got? Got my last rookie drafts in 30. Wish you luck there, Brock. Dang, AJ Brown almost fell to me, so I settled for Kelsey, which I usually never draft him in Dynasty, but it's tight end premium. Have 3 good years.
I think that's
Yeah,
a risky projection, my guy.
yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I would take any of the wide receivers or Kyle Pitts or CJ Stroud or even
Especially
Mark
knowing you
Andrews.
got Kittle at
Yeah.
4-8. Like I would much rather have Kittle at that point in time.
Yeah, if you replaced Kelsey with a Monner here and you had Kittle, like I would like it a lot more personally. I have a QB room of Lamar, Herbie, Geno, and Rodgers. No real holes on the team, and a top 224 first. I know I need to move Geno or Rodgers. How would you guys handle a situation like this? Well, I mean, you pretty much laid it out. You just need to move one of those quarterbacks, and I would say that.
Geno's the one I'm moving. He's on a high
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
I
I
think
mean, if
I think Rodgers, if he bounces back, will be worth
y-
more.
Yeah, you just go for some flex appeal, I would say, with either of those guys, whether it's a running back or wide receiver that helps you compete. Because I mean, if you have Lamar and Herbert, you're probably competing regardless, I would say.
Yeah, well, and
Um,
especially once you add a high quarterback to next year,
oh,
or even potentially Harrison. I would say when you're handling a situation like this, some people are going to be reluctant to give up pick capital for old players, so you're probably better off taking a little bit of a risk and going after like a receiver that has a little bit of a varying ceiling.
yeah,
Like if somebody's like lower on Jahan Dotson or something like that.
yeah, no, I would agree. How about Mixon and Connor in 2024? They may not be alive, and I'm joking. I seriously doubt they're going to be lead backs by 2024. To be honest, we've already heard rumblings from Cincinnati's camp that they are looking maybe to get off the Mixon contract this offseason. Never really had an opportunity to, so I can see him getting quote unquote one last year with the workload. And James Conner, this team is going to be absolute dog piss this upcoming year. Why would they keep a 28, 29-year-old running back with, at that point, what, 1,500 plus touches under his belt?
Yeah, man.
Like,
Anytime you talk about like a 27-year-old running back, if you project them for more than 1 year at a time, you're doing yourself a disservice. You should project. If you get more than 1 year, then gravy, right? Like I think if you were
yeah,
projecting James Conner for more than a year last year, then you got lucky that he's going to probably have a good workload again this year. Like it probably does not work out like that often. So I would say just count on 1 year with those guys.
yep, I'd agree. By the way, it's so funny how you mentioned the Swift and Lance, and I end up getting Lance.
Yeah, I'm actually annoyed. I wanted Akers to fall back to me.
Damn. Uh, where did we leave off? Got it.
Okay, so
Going to my
I'm on the
first NFL game this year. You got any plans to go to a game together? We've been talking about it quite a lot. I mean, we were talking about a couple games, right?
Yeah, I mean, like there's some games that are intriguing for sure.
Yeah,
We haven't made any like formal plans or anything like that yet, but
not
it's
yet.
definitely in the back of our mind here.
Yeah, and I mean,
I think
here,
am I
I'll let
gonna
you
be the
pick
one to
first.
do it? I guess I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna win now window.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll
not
take
bad.
Derrick Henry at this point in the draft. I think it's probably worthwhile. Do I want to go
7-12. Yeah.
really old? No, not really. I think, dude, I'm getting really nervous about the redraft. Maybe not so much dynasty because they're cheap enough that it doesn't really matter. But the redraft output and the outlook of DeAndre Hopkins, wherever he ends up landing, and Keenan Allen, they
Yeah.
scare the shit out of me, man. Because the guys that I've missed on over the past couple of years have been older receivers who have injury issues. Like I'm really sick of getting burned by the Michael Thomases of the world.
Yeah.
And like even I remember like one of my first real years, like not making content, but I was like kind of doing my own research and like making
Yeah.
rankings. I was
2019?
I, I took Larry Fitzgerald over Tyreek Hill in 2017.
2017. Yeah. What's funny is I actually have a similar story to that. Um, I took Larry Fitzgerald over Tyreek Hill, and then I think I traded away Devontae Freeman plus Larry Fitzgerald. Oh wait, no, that was the year before. So Larry Fitzgerald was a top 5 wide receiver the year before, and then you probably took him the next year, right?
Right. Yeah, that would be correct. Yeah. Maybe it
Yeah.
was
So
2018 that I'm talking about then.
So when I had Larry, basically I drafted Devontae Freeman and Larry Fitzgerald, but I really, really wanted LaShawn McCoy in the draft. And that was 2017, I believe, right? Oddly enough, it was Marco who drafted LaShawn McCoy. So he's going to drive up the bargain for me to have to pay. I ended up giving away to Marco, Devontae Freeman, and Larry Fitzgerald for LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn McCoy finished like the RB5, but Devontae Freeman wasn't too far behind him. But Larry Fitzgerald was like a top 5 wide receiver that year. So
Yikes.
I got fucking hosed. And it's just funny looking back because it's like that was 6 years ago at this point, man.
Well, like here, that's my thing. Like, because I know Keenan Allen is absolutely worth a third round redraft pick if he does exactly what I think he's going to do. But at the same time, like, dude, he just stinks like somebody who's going to be a huge bust in fantasy this year just because of
I
his
feel
his
you.
age and hamstring issues. Like when you're out for like a 7-game absence with a hamstring injury last year, like that is so fucking sketchy to invest in a year later.
Also, I'm sorry, but I'm not even the biggest fan of this guy. But if Dalton Kincaid's at the 8 of 5, I think that's a nice little value here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Um,
Does Shanahan's words on Trey Lance give you hope about his long-term value? Does he still have a higher ceiling than Darnold? I mean, he has a higher ceiling than those guys for sure, but
this is a rabbit hole we've been
we're
down.
not going down this rabbit hole again. Let's just put a bow on it by saying I think Purdy will be the starter because he's shown more and the
Which
coaching
makes
staff
sense.
seems to like him versus Trey Lance, where maybe Lance gets moved or maybe he has an opportunity to start this year and he shows something. I think even if Lance starts this year, unless he shows the higher ceiling that he absolutely does have, he might be on a short leash. And that's why I'm nervous about him. So I think a lot of people are taking the stance that, Trey Lance, even if he's not the starter in San Francisco, he'll get another opportunity somewhere else. That's a slippery slope, in my opinion. I don't think, even if he did get another opportunity somewhere else, I don't think he would be on a long leash there either.
Yep. No, I agree with you there. By the way, yeah, you got Deontay at the 801. I just took in. That's a
I'll
fucking
take Deontay
steal.
at that point in time.
Steal.
Got Kyler at the 402 in a recent startup. That's like the 10th comment I've read where
Dude,
someone says they get Kyler in the 4th round. Grabbing Allen, Olave, London, and a first in the top. How did you somehow get a first out of this?
How'd you get an extra
Allen,
first,
Olave.
dude?
So you picked 1-1 or 1-2 clearly, and then you took Allen and Olave. I would imagine maybe you traded down in the 3rd round and still got London. Is what my guess is.
Maybe it was a 3rd round reversal or I don't know. You need to explain this a little bit.
I'm guessing he picked 1-1 or 1-2 and traded down from his 301, 302, and where he would have probably just taken London anyway and gotten, maybe the 311 or something like that plus a first.
Yeah, that's probably what happened. That is a crazy good value there. Good work. Kenny Pickett feels like a hole to me.
Yeah, he is. I think he was in the Hold These Players video, if I'm not mistaken.
He may be the most league market dependent player I've ever seen. If you're in a league with like your Pittsburgh buddies and they're all grabbing brews after a hard day working and they're like, yo, Kenny Pickett going to win us the division and shit. If that's like the type of conversations you guys are having at poker night, then you probably put him on your league market. Whereas, if you're in a league that doesn't really value what he did last year, doesn't really watch
which is
what
like
he did
most people who follow content and fantasy Twitter are not going to like Kenny Pickett. So
yeah. Well, he's just got a stigma as like this little noodle-armed guy that is semi-athletic but isn't really like that athletic.
But could he be this year's Daniel Jones? Absolutely.
Well, that would be like the projection. It's like if he hits his ceiling, he's Daniel Jones. And people want to hate on Daniel Jones. He's still a guy that could probably in season fetch someone a mid to late projected first, probably even a mid-ish type of projection. Like you don't think in season a team who's selling Daniel Jones can't get the projected 106 or 107 for him?
Well, and they probably could. And the other thing too is that if Kenny Pickett looks like this year's Daniel Jones in his 2nd season versus his 4th season, like Daniel Jones was in, then there's a chance that he goes a lot higher than Daniel Jones was. Because at least for my sake, the reason I've come, turn the corner a little bit on Kenny Pickett is because he landed in the perfect situation. They're investing in the offensive line. They have receiver talent around him. They have a running back. They have tight ends. They have, a franchise that doesn't ever lose, have losing seasons in Tomlin's career. Like, he went to a situation where I wish like Malik Willis or Sam Howell had went to, who I had rated higher before the draft.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. So we are right here. 14 team PPR start 11 gave CMC and Purdy got a 104, 24 first and 25 first.
Crazy return there.
Yeah, I'm a 14 team PPR. Is this a super flex league? Regardless, I would assume
if Purdy's adding that much to the deal, I would assume it's probably super flex. But even if it wasn't, and a start 11 too probably has a super flex in it.
100%. Yeah. No, I do like that move quite a bit. I was just curious because I'm like, if that's a super flex, the 104 I have on par, or if not more value. Actually, I do have more value on that because I even have Gibbs rated higher than CMC. I have Stroud rated higher than CMC, and I think JSN rated higher than CMC too. So I'm just realizing this now that CMC is basically worth the 106 based on my rankings.
Yeah.
Superflex.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. That's how we value youth, but that's kind of how Dynasty goes. And Purdy, generally speaking, for me is a buy at this point in time. But if he's going to add that much value to the trade, then absolutely take that.
100%.
Landon says rebuilding team need to replenish draft capital. Should I trade Ridley, Mike? See, these guys are all difficult because they need to be producing on the field because they're all kind of at a low point in value at this point in time. I would want a first and a second mid-season for Calvin Ridley because I think that's what he's worth. I would want a late first for Mike Williams. I would take any two probably for Cortland Sutton, but Ridley and Mike Williams, I think you're probably going to need to hold them until the season happens because I believe in both guys from a redraft perspective, and I think you'll be able to get a good chunk of change for them.
By the way, quick note, Javonte Williams, great value there at the 804. I just wanted to point out. I don't mind getting Pacheco here at the 9.8. I'm not the biggest fan, but at this point, he's a 23-year-old running back with the Chiefs. Like, he's got value accrual basically pinned on him at this point.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
But by the way, Chan, I would have taken fucking Elijah Moore, but I get him in like almost every mock, so I'll let you have your glory.
Yeah, I will take Tyler Lockett here. Given my build, I could use some receiver depth. He's like one of those go-to like guys you wait on. And speak of the devil, I'm not going to be on the fence with this situation. I have conviction that Brock Purdy is the guy, and if I have conviction that Brock Purdy is the guy, I should be drafting him when he's on the board at the 10-1.
Yeah, I mean, one of us is going to profit off of this.
One of us is going to profit off of this. I have quite a bit of Brock Purdy in Dynasty right now. I have him in 3 or 4 leagues of my 9. Like, I have him in quite a few leagues.
Well, I just realized, by the way, he was semi part of the trade that we made, the Jalen Hurts trade. I just realized I like a part of the deal was Brock Purdy for a 3, but then I ended up giving you back the 3 in the Hurts deal. So basically, if we're equating it, it was basically Hurts, Goddard for Kittle, Purdy, and Fields, right?
Yeah. So I bought Purdy at the perfect time, I think. And I was saying to sell Purdy at the time, but I mean, you gave him, I think it was the 311 that ended up being. Something it was like a late 3 too. It was not an early 3.
Yeah, it was a random 3 at the time I did it. I just wanted the quarterback points off my team, but you ended up getting the 3 back anyways because we ended up making the deal. So it looks a little bit more believable if we just sub out the whole Purdy for 311 swap and then 311 swap in the deal. If we just say Purdy was basically part of the deal.
Yeah, no, I actually really like Purdy as a dynasty buy right now because I do think, again, we're talking about like the strategy that I employed here was, I'm going to go light at quarterback. I need to be taking quarterbacks that can accumulate a shit ton of value. And even though Brock Purdy's not the most special athlete in the world and is not going to break fantasy football, I have Kirk Cousins already on my team. If I got a young Kirk Cousins who's playing for San Francisco, he's going to be worth a 3rd-round startup pick, even if he doesn't run.
Yeah, no, 100%. By the way, I am on the clock here. Let me just take a look. Receiver. What are we cooking here?
There's a pretty fucking obvious name on the board for me that I would be taking if I was in your spot.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm missing someone?
I don't want to say it because maybe he slides back to me. Probably won't, but
he won't. I feel like I'm overlooking someone right now. Is it someone like obvious?
I think it's a pretty obvious value, especially given how the board's kind of shaken out.
What the oh.
Yeah, I think Will Levis was like I almost took him. I almost went Purdy and Levis with my 2 picks there, but I feel like I would have been really screwed at wide receiver if I didn't do that.
I did not even see it. I was like looking over. I'm like, is he looking at wide receivers? So I was looking at the wide receivers for a bit. I'm like, oh, maybe he's just fucking pump faking me. I checked the quarterbacks and he's there. I'm like, bet.
Yeah.
Funny.
Brady says full rebuild. Best running back is Nyheim Hines. Who can I down tier to from Godwin? Let me take a look at who I have rated near Godwin. That's young.
Dotson.
Dotson would be, he's the first guy that came to my mind as well.
I mean, like it depends, of course.
I would say that in most leagues, that Dotson might be worth more than Godwin, though.
It's fair. Well, I was going to say it depends on your league market, but I would say Burks is one for sure too.
Yeah.
I think in most league markets, Burks might be actually higher, but I'm just saying, like, if your league's lower on Burks, I think that's a good transition option.
I'm not high on Pickens, but he would be kind of in that area as well. Zay
Would you
Flowers.
do Bateman in 2?
Yeah, Bateman or Moore plus a second would be fine as well. Bateman or Elijah Moore. Jameson Williams, if you're high on him, would probably be in that area as well. Yep. That's pretty much it as far as young receivers, because I doubt you could get to Quentin Johnston or anybody, Christian Watson, anybody like that.
Agree with you. What would you think Howell is worth in 24 rookie picks? I would say right now, probably an early to mid 2.
Yeah, I'm comfortable. If you have, let's say, 2 quarterbacks and you're looking to take a swing on somebody, I would be comfortable paying an early to mid second for him. I think some people would say you're fucking nuts. I'll take the 2 over the 5th round starter, because there's very real possibility that Sam Howell could be out of a job by week 4 this year.
Well,
it's good. But I think I'm willing to take the shot on a guy who rushed for 1,000 yards in college, who I had rated as my quarterback 1 in the 2022 draft.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, and again, people might comment like, if you have your process, stick to your process. And like, I fully agree on the majority of things, but that's kind of like the litmus test, where the process would say taking the second is going to be the proper play. It's going to be the winning play in the majority of situations. But you really get skilled at Dynasty by understanding the context and understanding when it's appropriate to take those calculated type of moves. So again, like you said, if you had your own evaluation on Sam Howell, you believe that he has the potential to be a top 15, top 20 level quarterback asset. At that point, if you're acquiring that for an early to mid second on a player that's 23 years old, like at that point, I think it's a fair bet to make. I would say, again, if you're looking straight value, the second's probably an easier play. You know that pick's going to gain value over the course of the year, whereas Sam Howell might lose value if he loses the starting job. However, the extrapolation of value that Sam Howell can get if he has a very, very good second year is way more than the value that the second can accrue.
Yeah, and I think the crazy thing too is like the NFL landscape is pretty baffled that the Commanders are doing this. They're like, why are they starting this fit? Like I've heard like, casual NFL draft podcasts and NFL, podcasts talk about, they're like, it's weird that they're starting a 5th round pick. And I'm like, I think the reason is because he's impressing them that much, which means that he must have a bigger leash than we think.
Yeah.
Like I think they wouldn't even be messing around with this if Howell wasn't impressing them. They would have just signed Derek Carr in free agency.
Yeah.
Like that's what they would have done. But the fact that they didn't do that tells me that they're fighting for their jobs. And I think like at least Ron Rivera is because of the new ownership and stuff. And I think they know that like the best way for them to keep their jobs is to develop a young, cheap quarterback.
Well, and plus too, they want to give him every benefit of the doubt right now, because if they start Jacoby Brissett, they basically admit the most polarizing question on the roster, starting quarterback, is unsolved. Because as much as you like Jacoby Brissett, he's going to be a bridge quarterback anywhere he is.
He's a one-way ticket to get Ron Rivera fired, is what Jacoby 100%. Brissett is. Because he's a one-way ticket to 7 wins.
Putting Jacoby Brissett in from them would basically be like throwing the towel that Sam Howell didn't work out. And now they have nothing to show upon their actual tenure as the coach / management of the team.
Yeah, and if you're ownership or the GM and you're not going to lose your job, maybe it's just Rivera that's at risk. Like you want to see what Howell has, because if he's not good, he's going to lose more games than Jacoby Brissett, first of all. And if he is good, then he's going to provide a lot more spark and hope to the franchise and sell. And obviously the ownership does care about selling tickets and that kind of stuff too.
Yep. By the way, this was a name that was lower on the list, but I'm starting to get a lot warmer on Nico Collins this year, just based off the volume he was able to command with Brandon Cooks there. Even though I think John Mechie could potentially play a role in this team, maybe be the slot wide receiver for this team.
Oh, no.
I did not even know Greg Dulcich was on the board, so you absolutely got sniped.
Oh, I fucking hate that, dude. Yeah. I was like, oh, there's no way Dulcich falls to me here, right? Like,
well, when I looked over, I saw the best tight ends ranked were Schultz and Komet, so I didn't think he was there. That's tough.
That's tough.
Taken him too.
All right, so I'm gonna take Schultz here. I do need a tight end for this team. Theoretically, I am competing, so I would need a tight end, and then I'll probably grab a running back. Kind of ambiguous situation here. I think I'll go Kendre Miller here. Get someone a little younger who can kind of work into my roster. I'm not the biggest fan of this team, if I'm being honest. I don't really like it.
Me neither with mine.
But I have 2 anchor running backs with Bijan and Derrick Henry. I have Lamb, Diggs, Smith, Deontay, and Tyler Lockett to kind of anchor out my wide receiver position. I'm pretty light at wide receiver. I probably should have went potentially maybe with like Debo, where I went with Pickett and then like faded quarterback a little bit more. And then instead of taking Deontay or Henry, I could have taken another quarterback. But I mean, this is why we do mock drafts, right? Because in most situations, like I said, I would have built out a productive struggle type of shell anyways and grabbed Kyler Murray and Bryce Young at the 1-2 turn or something.
Yep, I agree with you there. So I do grab Darnell Mooney for my final pick. Nice young wide receiver, similar type of upside case to that of Nico Collins, where unproven, but
I would argue that he's not the same case at all. I would argue that he's just undervalued because people are kind of discounting his situation, where if he has another good season this year and competes for DJ Moore, relatively speaking, in fantasy production, he could sign a decent contract and be the number 2 for a team next year.
I believe that to be the case with Nico Collins as well, though, because I do think people are going to look at the situation, rookie quarterback, team offense that wasn't really good last year. But I was going to point to the fact that both of them, from a volume share perspective, from a peripherals perspective, were able to command targets when they were healthy on their offense. So obviously the offensive concerns for the Bears would be the overall volume. For the Texans would be more so, as much as we like CJ Stroud, is still a rookie quarterback. But I do think both of them, given the volume peripherals, like I said, that they showed, provide some sneaky upside. Because again, with Darnell Mooney, obviously he's behind DJ Moore, quote unquote, in the pecking order. But I wouldn't be shocked if this is a more 26% target share versus 23% target share situation, rather than DJ Moore getting 29% and Darnell Mooney getting 18%. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason I don't think they're similar is because Mooney has an 1,100-yard season in
That's
his
fair.
career where he had like 140 targets, and
Yeah,
he is a
that's true.
free agent after this year. Like I said, even if he has like a solid peripheral season, he could sign a Christian Kirk caliber contract and go sign with Kansas City to be their number 2
Makes
receiver.
sense.
Even if it's not KC, even if it's just like, he signs to the Bills as their second receiver, or he signs to the I don't know, the Titans or something. If Treylon Burks takes a step forward and he's like Will Levis is number 2 long term, like, I don't know. There's a lot of upside. I think Nico, because he's not a free agent after this year, because he's only in his going into his 3rd year, I believe.
Yep.
He actually has a chance to be like the long term one for CJ Stroud, which would be really interesting. J Dog says, "Hey guys, in a non tight end premium league, how much would you be willing to add to Goddard to get Andrews?" I'd be willing to add a pretty decent amount, even in a non tight end premium. I view
Mid to
Andrews
late
as like
first.
a pretty solid tier above Goddard. He's actually younger than him too, I believe.
Mid to late first.
Yeah. Yeah, that would probably be like the highest I would be willing to go. I would try my best to avoid giving up a mid to late first, or if I do, like get a 2 back or something like that. But yeah, that's probably about what the value difference is.
Yep, I'd agree. Let's smash some comments, and then a couple people wanted us to kind of go through this mock, so we can do that quickly as well. But how do you guys handle it when you have guys you feel very convicted are going to gain value in the season? Do you hold until they start smashing, then sell? Some that I love are Brooks and Ramondre. Yeah, like for me personally, if you're already ahead of them in terms of what their market value is, you have no reason to sell. So for you personally, although they might be a little bit more volatile, if you're believing in more the high end range of outcome for them, that's where we got to take stances in fantasy. Because at the end of the day here, if I view somebody's going to be a value on the market, I have to have some skin in the game. I have to kind of show why I view them as being better than what the market says. And the way to do that is to have them rostered on my team. So for me personally, the way I view it is you want to stay aligned with the market for the most part, but you do want to have your little exploitations you can take advantage of.
Yeah, well, and sometimes too, like just because they start smashing doesn't mean you have to sell them. Like for example,
Exactly.
Deontay Johnson is somebody on my team that I took who I have a higher value on the market than what they currently value. Like I view Deontay Johnson as like a guy who's worth an early 2nd round, even potentially late 1st round pick, rookie pick, because I think he's a very solid flex play, a very solid wide receiver 3 in Dynasty. If he started smashing and he was like the wide receiver 19 in points per game through like 7 weeks of the year, yeah, I could sell him. And if I was building like a house money team or maybe a rebuild and I just took a shot on him because I thought he was a value, then I probably would sell him. But if I, draft a contender like I did in this mock draft, I would just keep him on my team and use the production because I viewed him to be undervalued. And obviously he's kind of paying off at that point.
Yep. Well, let me ask you the question here because I do think it's a fascinating one. But realistically, in terms of dynasty, like how old is Deontay Johnson? 26 years old, right?
26, I think. Yeah.
26 years old. Michael Pittman, 25 years old. What is the big discernible difference between Deontay Johnson and Michael Pittman? Both show that they command targets. Both of them, I guess, even still, like I think I trust Pittsburgh's situation in terms of overall volume more than I trust Indianapolis's year one. So realistically, you're getting both lead alpha target players in their offense. I have less question marks about the validity of the Steelers offense entering 2023. And yet there is a round and a half difference between the valuation of Deontay Johnson and Michael Pittman right now.
Yeah, no, and the age difference between these two guys is like less than a year. It's Deontay's 26 and a half, Michael Pittman's 25.7 years old. Like they're pretty similar in terms of an age perspective. And for what it's worth too, Deontay has a higher finish in his career than Pittman. Yeah. Deontay's finish is a wide receiver 1 in points per game. Pittman's best season, he was like a mid wide receiver 2.
Yeah, 100%. It's just crazy when you think about a player who in the last 3 years has commanded 144, 169, 147 targets, and he's currently being drafted outside of the top 30 wide receivers in Dynasty.
And another guy who has at least 2 to 3 more years of constantly getting open, which is literally all he's done most of his career, which is all that really matters. Yeah, he's going to drop passes and stuff, but like, who cares? He's getting targets. Yeah. Brock says, do y'all have a redraft ranking? So on our site right now, we do have our best ball rankings live, which are essentially our redraft rankings, because I'm assuming if you're doing any redraft stuff right now, it is best ball. So our best ball rankings are live on the site. We will be adding our like redraft, like for season long rankings to the site at some point, maybe in the next like couple weeks. I would say if you guys are really pounding the table for them, I'm sure we'll get that going ASAP. But we do already have our best ball rankings, which are essentially our redraft rankings for all intensive purposes right now.
Yep. And then of course, once the official redraft rankings are put up on the site, we'll have those. But for now, yeah, no, the best ball rankings, there's not really much of a discernible difference. Obviously, if you're in a best ball draft, though, you're going to tend to favor the stronger offenses because you want to get some correlation. And that's really the only difference I find.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, too, if you guys used our redraft cheat sheet last year, we had J33 Bear or whatever, Jonathan in our audience. He made like a cheat sheet where, like, if you were doing your draft, you could like check off players that were off the board. We will have that available again as either, well, probably both. We'll have it as a downloadable thing that you can get from our site, and also we'll probably have it as incentive for you guys to sign up on Underdog if you're a new user as well this off season. So. Definitely stay tuned for that. Like once it comes to your season long drafts with your redraft buddies or whatever, we will 100% have that out again for you guys. Burks, I feel like I could easily get a first four in some of my leagues, but I feel convicted enough to hold. Yeah, I mean, dude, if you have conviction and you're getting offered like here's when you know you need to sell somebody. If you're high on them, but your league is even higher than you, then you can sell them, right? Like if somebody was willing to give you what you project to be an early to mid first next year for Treylon Burks, then you should sell him. And even if you have conviction that he's going to be great, because if he is great, he'll probably be worth that next year and you didn't lose anything.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you a prime example. You guys know how high I am on Bryce Young, but I was in a league where I have Josh Allen, I have Daniel Jones. I already have monopolized the 2024 draft. And realistically, I'm in pole position to get either Drake May or Caleb Williams. So for me personally, with Jones, with Allen, with Bryce Young, I didn't really see a way I can add Drake May or Caleb Williams next year without kind of absorbing some opportunity costs. So in that perspective, I ended up shipping away Bryce Young for two projected 124, 125 first round picks. The way I kind of view it, like I said, is I'm already going to be bad with my own pick, so I expect to get a quarterback equity piece with that. I'm already going to have monopolized class with 5 other firsts now in 2024 to add my running backs, to have my wide receivers, and now I have 3 first-round picks in 2025 once I enter that house money situation to be able to say, hey, listen, like, now I got a team I feel like can compete, can contend. I have 3 first-round picks of trade equity in season to maybe go purchase, from a buying power perspective, a veteran player at that point. So for me personally, although I am attached and I love Bryce Young, I felt like an offer like that, which is, by the way, ahead of most market value, I would say 2 mid-projected firsts for Bryce Young. At that point, I kind of considered, like, listen, I'm high on him, but it makes the best interest for my own team.
Yeah, it really all depends on where you're at, where your league's at, and the value you're being offered. If you love a player, but your league mates love him more, and it's at a point where you don't think he's even worth that, even though you're higher on him, then you should, like the process would say, you should probably sell that player. And also think about the upside case too. If you're right about the player as well, are they going to be worth much more or even less than what you're being offered? At times. So we have a shit ton of comments. We'll maybe skim through some of the interesting ones and then we'll probably sign off of here. Pionio said he drafted T that same year in redraft. Jamar fell like 2 rounds. I grabbed them both. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. In that season, Jamar Chase went ahead of T Higgins on Underdog. He was like a 4th round pick versus Higgins was like a 6th round pick. And I know in my own home league, they went in the same round. I got Higgins in the 5th at the end of the 5th round. And my buddy got Jamar Chase at the beginning of the 5th round. So they were both pretty similarly valued, I think, in like home leagues.
Yep.
So Ryan, in this type of league, I would be less likely to build productive struggles in general because I think lottery pick based rookie system
gets rid of the reward, bro.
Exactly.
Like, I don't understand like that
personally.
Like. And I guess this would be the debate people have between whether it should be implemented in the NFL, because obviously it's implemented in the NBA versus the NHL. But I think in Dynasty, you should have full control over what your team's able to do. And point blank simple, a lottery system doesn't give you full control. So for me personally, I have a problem with that. One of the perks of being able to quote unquote tank, to quote unquote get rid of your own potential points, is to be rewarded with a Bijan Robinson, a Caleb Williams type of player, a type of asset in your league. So for the most part, if your team's picking 101, there's probably a reason why you're picking 101. So having the variation or the variance factor where the 106 can now suddenly jump up to the 101, and let's say it was a scenario where the guy finished 7-7 and had the 3rd most potential points, and you're going to add Bijan Robinson to that team now. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure. I'm on the same page there with lottery picks. Just keep it in the NBA. Let's get it out of football. So let's answer this question. Then I want you to go through, if you don't mind, and see who asked about their team, and we'll kind of talk about those. And then we'll probably hop off here at some point. I think Micah's question is really interesting, though. That's why I want to talk about it. He said, "Is the best strategy this year still a productive struggle?" So the best strategy will 100% depend on your league. I know we have videos that say like the number one strategy and shit, but like realistically, the best strategy will depend on your league, the board, how players are being valued. So the best strategy, I would say, as a blanket statement, in my opinion, is to build a 1-year punt. But that's not always possible if everybody knows that in your draft room and everybody wants to build a 1-year punt or a productive struggle. At that point in time, zigging when the rest of your league is zagging is probably the smart idea. So the best strategy in a casual redraft setting, productive struggle, 1-year punt is definitely the way that I would go. But cashing in on the dip in running backs and trying to create some contenders, that's a viable strategy in a sharper room where nobody's valuing running backs and maybe your team, is like a house money team or whatever, and you can afford to add some production.
Agreed. Which would Debo made more sense for my team construction instead of Pierce? I mean, given the fact that you got value on Swift, Cook, and the other Cook, oddly enough, in terms of your contending window, I probably would have went with Debo there personally. Yeah, I do agree there. What kind of draft this is? This is a dynasty draft over on Sleeper. Superflex settings, 1.5 tight end premium. So hence why you see some of the tight end valuations get propped up probably by a round or so, obviously getting the extra half point per reception.
Yep. Okay. So let me just look around here. So we've already talked about the Lance news. Like I talked about it. Check out the video, the OTA news one. I broke it down in that one. And then we obviously had like a 10-minute discussion about it on our last live stream. How does a 4-point per passing touchdown as opposed to a 6-point change your strategy and roster construction? It doesn't really change my strategy that much. I would say a 4-point per passing touchdown will just cause me to slightly lean the rushing quarterbacks more so than the passing quarterbacks. That's really the only difference.
It affects some micro player versus player takes. So hypothetically, in a 6-point passing touchdown, maybe again, I still took actually Hurts the 103 in a 6-point passing touchdown league. But hypothetically, if there was like a clear tier for you between Hurts, Herbert, and Burrow, hypothetically, maybe you prefer one of the more passing quarterbacks in that situation because 34 times 6 is going to be more than 24 times 6. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think where it shows up for me is like Lawrence versus Fields. I think Lawrence is well above Fields in a 6-point per passing touchdown, whereas I feel like they're a lot closer in a 4-point per passing touchdown.
I agree with that. Let's I feel like we can just rip these off, honestly. How do we feel about the Trey Lance news? Actually,
we already talked about that one. Let's go down to Jonathan's here. He said, "I have a strong win now team, but don't own my 2024 first. Should I trade Devontae Smith to receive Quentin Johnson, my own first back?" I mean, that's a pretty good return. So I would say just at face value, that's a pretty solid move. If it would make your team worse, like, I get it. You don't want to make that move, but honestly, the buying power of having your own first back, you could go buy another player if you wanted to.
Yep.
Like, what are your, like, if you could pocket Devontae, like, you trade away Devontae Smith, you pocket a free Quentin Johnston, basically, and you just use your own first to go buy Amari Cooper or somebody that's going to give you better production than even Devontae Smith might even give you from like a 1-year window. I think you have to do that, right?
Oh, in a heartbeat. And I'm higher on Quentin, so I'll agree with that as well. 101 in a 2-quarterback dynasty is grabbing JJ Gibbs in a younger quarterback. I mean, if it's a 2-quarterback league, just go with Mahomes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. In a 2-quarterback dynasty league, you should not be drafting Justin Jefferson first overall.
Yeah. As much as I like J-Jeff, like, with this is in a super flex room and he's going 108, 109 area, right? Any of these quarterbacks for me personally, especially in a 2-quarterback league. I think in a 2-quarterback league, you can argue these two as well. Personally.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I have a strong win now team. Oh, we already read that.
Let's go down to this one. Jack says 102, Allen 210, Olave traded back to the 409. Okay, so this is like when he was talking about how he got Kyler at 402. So he traded back to the 409 with a 2024. Wow, that's crazy, dude. The fact that it was a third round reversal by the looks of it. 310 is where you were picking, but then you traded down less than a round or just over a round of ADP, and you got a first and Drake London. That's ridiculous. There,
crazy.
So yeah, literally, dude, that's crazy. Yeah, I don't know how you're getting ones
Yeah,
out of these.
you're
How do you
stealing
feel?
that.
Okay, let's talk about Andrew's team. He
Yeah.
said, how do we feel about his team at 107? So he went with Lawrence, Garrett Wilson, Tua, TJ Hawkinson, Josh Jacobs, Burks, Jameson Williams. So the one thing I will say, I think you got like pretty good value on all the players that you took. The one thing I will say is like, pick a side on these young receivers. After you took Jacobs, I would have
Yeah.
probably went with more productive receivers. Because
Yeah.
if you select Jacobs button to draft, taking Burks and Williams, as much as they're valuable assets, I would prefer to go with, McLaurin and Pittman or Godwin in those scenarios, just knowing that you're going to probably have to compete with having Jacobs on your team.
Yeah, it's a tricky spot, I would say, because I mean, you have obviously young assets at the top, like Corey kind of said, but then you kind of made your quote unquote win now push by taking both Hawkinson and Jacobs. I personally think if your first three are in that situation, Lawrence, Wilson, Tua, if you're going to take Hawkinson and Jacobs, like Corey said, A, the rest of your team has to be built to win now, or B, if you still like the young value like Burks and Williams, then you should probably have favored, a guy like Jordan Addison was available because I took him, but Jerry Judy, DJ Moore didn't fall back, but Brandon Ayuk, even at that point, maybe you want to take the plunge on a guy like Jahan Dotson. I think that would make sense. So overall, I just kind of feel like the peaks of your players aren't really aligned. And like we've said in the past, especially in our strategy videos, is typically when I'm building a team, I kind of want the peaks to be aligned. And I will say outside of Ridley on my team, it's kind of that theme where everybody's kind of young. Chase Young, Bryce Young, London, Addison, Ridley's the outlier, but Najee, Lance, you know what I mean? Like my whole team as a whole, outside of Calvin Ridley, I don't think anybody else is older than 25 years old.
Right, and Ridley you view as a value accumulation piece, even if he's not old.
Yep.
Or even if he's not young. So yeah, I would say once you made that Jacobs pick, you kind of needed to make your shit or get off the pot and make your decision there. So that's what I would have done differently in that spot. Sean says made a blockbuster 12-team superflex tight end premium trade. He traded away Bijan, Bryce, CD, and Laporta. So that's a lot of fucking firepower in one trade for Hurts, Gibbs, JSN, and Mims. Okay, so let's how much do we need to get to Hurts here?
Bryce,
would you
Bijan,
take the 101 and 102 for Jalen Hurts? Like, is that a fair trade to you? Bijan and Bryce for Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, it's about fair. Let's cancel that out, I would say.
So then CD and Laporta for Gibbs, JS. I think I like the Hurts side of this trade.
Yeah, especially if you want to pay up for Hurts, I think that's a fine deal to make, especially if you already had T-Law, Wilson, and Olave as your core. You're a diehard Birds fan, so that even adds to it. Honestly, in a scenario of quote unquote going and getting your guy, I do think that you didn't quote unquote overpay by market value standards.
Yeah, this is a lot. There's a lot going on in this trade in a lot of ways that it works out or doesn't work out for you. But I would say, the difference between Gibbs and Bijan and the difference between JSN and CD is probably smaller than the difference between Bryce and Hurts. At least in my opinion, from a value perspective. But, if Bryce hits, obviously this trade's not going to age quite as well for you.
What's your thoughts on Roshan? I have him in almost 50% of my leagues with 9 shares. Yeah, I mean, at cost, I don't mind a mid-second round pick for a player that can have maybe you don't want to put him on the Dameon Pierce spectrum, but at the very minimum, you're going to be able to have a selling window like what Tyler Algier represented this offseason. At one point this offseason, Tyler Algier had a sellout of early second round type of value at one point before they drafted Bijan.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so not to mention you're still getting at worst, even if you're not unable to sell in that window, probably an Alexander Madison like insurance handcuff.
Yeah, exactly. Roshan's another one of those guys that whoever asked the question, like, what do you do when you have conviction and like, do you sell them like mid-season if they're like doing what you thought they were going to do? Again, that question all comes back to, what your team state is. Like if you're a competitive team and you drafted Roshan Johnson, he's performing at RB 21 levels in points per game, you're just going to ride out that production. Whereas if you drafted him to a rebuilder, you're probably going to look to cash out for, 2-2s or whatever the case is. Micah says, by the way, Danny, the game I'm going to is Cowboys versus Panthers. Got to cheer on our boys, baby. Is that in AT&T or is that in Carolina?
I'm not too sure. Honestly, I haven't seen the only like home away that I know for sure. Obviously, the divisional game is going to be one home, one away. But the only ones like I know for sure are obviously Buffalo and basically mostly Buffalo because I'm trying to go to that game.
I guess your divisional games as well.
Well, that's what I pointed out. Yeah, like outside of the divisional games, because obviously you're going to have one home, one away. Which week is it? Carolina. We're looking. Am I tripping? Yeah. Oh, at Carolina week 11 at 1 p.m.
Oh,
That
that's
sounds
not
like
bad.
fun. Sounds like
Yeah.
fun.
So Leonardo says top 3 teams. So Leo's at 2. So I'm assuming he wants to talk about his team real quick.
Yeah.
I like the value you got on some of these players. I think maybe these quarterback picks were just value options. Same
Yeah.
goes for like the Bucks wide receivers or whatever. I think having the shell that you had after 4 rounds, I might have gone a little younger, knowing that you know were in a spot like
Yeah.
that. But at the same time, like outside of Quentin Johnston, all those guys are going to be productive right away. So you could also kind of view that as like, hey, I was staying flexible and then I decided to compete, kind of thing. I think I would have just changed the Quentin Johnson. If you changed the Quentin Johnson pick to Christian Watson, then you could have probably just made the transition to compete kind of the way you did here. So I would say I actually do really like your team. I think you did a pretty good job. I also, I mean, Chan asked about his team too, so we can talk about his.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson and Dak Prescott's a very good start there. Going Smith and Jigba and Cup is something I probably wouldn't have done.
Yeah. It seems kind of
Because they both
counterintuitive.
accomplish different goals.
Yeah.
So I probably would have went with one or the other. Like if you wanted to go Diggs Cup or JSN, Metcalf or something, I probably would have done that instead of doing what you did. And then again, investing in the running back position is fine. But the JSN pick is the one that kind of sticks out to me as one that I probably wouldn't have made if you were intending on doing that.
100%. We got a super chat quickly from JJ. Appreciate the support. He says, trade Burrow for London or ride Geno and Rodgers, but no 2024 picks, or keep Burrow because of age cliff on the other quarterbacks. 40-man rosters.
That's a big league, man.
I mean, what the fuck, man? Like, I love Joe Burrow, but Drake London's a guy I have as a 3rd-round valuation in super flex leagues. Where are you leaning here? Because I don't think Geno and Rodgers is a situation I want to be left in, but I also think Burrow for London is a value. Like I would rather London than one quarterback.
Let me look at my 1 quarterback rankings. I'm curious how close I have those guys because I do have the quarterbacks highly in my one. Like even though it's 1 quarterback, like I legit have Burrow and London back to back in my rankings. I have London at 18 and Burrow at 19. So for me, like when you're talking about those like long-term like stud quarterbacks, like this would be a different conversation if you're talking Deshaun Watson for Drake London. Like as 100%. Much as I like Deshaun Watson, he has way more risk than Joe Burrow. So
yeah, 100%. Or even like Kyler Murray.
Burrow personally, I think.
Yeah, in your situation, because you only have Geno and Rodgers, again, I would probably agree. Like if this was a different quarterback, like even Deshaun Watson, like you said, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, even like at that point, you want to trade that for London.
Also indicates that you're trying to win, and not only is Drake London not really a win now wide receiver, but Burrow is going to help you win. So I would probably 100%. Just hold Burrow there.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Appreciate the super chat nonetheless.
Cats took over also said, what do you think of my team at 109? Said usually just draft for value and trade for contender / productive struggle later. That's also, staying flexible in the draft's fine. Jefferson, Kyler, Jahmyr Gibbs, Daniel Jones. That's a pretty, I actually really like this team. It's probably my favorite one so far, I would say, that I've looked over. I think you got great value on probably every single player that you drafted legitimately. Like, I don't think I dislike the value on any one of these guys.
Yeah, no, he honestly had a very good draft, I would say as well.
This is more of like your 1-year punt type of build. So I think you did great there. Kyler, Daniel Jones, Sam Howell, Stafford. Like Stafford, you should be able to flip mids. I think Stafford's a good, contending value in startups right now, but I think he's just, being forgotten about. And if he's on the field producing like a top 20 fantasy quarterback, you're going to get a lot more than assets that the 11-9 would give you there.
I agree with that. Not to mention, oddly enough, it fits the name, Cat Stafford. You end up getting Matt Stafford. So I love that. Also want to point out he does have the Washington triple stack in this room, getting Dotson, McLaurin, and Sam Howell. So some fun there. If you're going to bet on Sam Howell, you may as well bet on his pass catcher. So don't mind that as well. We'll quickly get to the super chat as well from Tyler. Appreciate that. JSN top 2024 top 2 pick, 2025 mid first, Dotson and Ingram for Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley, Alec Pierce, and DeAndre Swift in a 16-team super flex. So, in a 16-teamer, obviously, like Lamar's going to have a ton of value because he's the quarterback. But if you're guaranteeing me that's a top 2 2024 pick in a 16-team league, like the depth of having JSN, the first, Dotson, I think outweighs just having the one piece with Jackson. Like if that's a guaranteed top 2 2024 pick, I think I want the package side here.
Yeah, I think I'm probably on the same page with that one as well. JSC says Christian McCaffrey at 3-3. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the room that we draft in, man. Like people, we don't draft, aging running backs that could be useless for fantasy this time next year. And
Yeah.
not that I think Christian McCaffrey will have that happen, but it's definitely in those range of outcomes. So I can't draft him over foundational assets like T Higgins and Drake London, who went right after him. Back to my question from earlier, would you move Geno for Deontay? I think Geno has more market value than Deontay Johnson, so I would probably want a little plus on top of Deontay if I was moving off of Geno. But I would say, generally speaking, I value Deontay higher. I just
I
think
mean,
knowing the market values of the two, I would probably want more.
I mean, to be fair, in this room, like he went 705 versus 801, so it's not like there's
I
much
think
of a
the
difference
market would
there.
have it
But
about another round difference between that, where Deontay would go
fair.
mid to late 8th round, and then Geno would probably go about a round earlier or half round earlier than where he went.
I mean, if that's the market you're working in, then absolutely try to see. But yeah, like, I think they're very close for me in my rankings. But yeah, like you said, if you can get more, you may as well. Any plans
So
to add
Micah,
tight end?
my rankings are actually in 1.5 tight end premium format. So I don't have 2 tight end premium rankings, and we'll definitely bring that up with the
Mason.
devs and stuff to see if we can
Yeah.
get, because like on our site there's a age toggle where you can toggle like the age, and we could maybe get like a checkbox that says like tight end premium, non-tight end premium, or whatever. But we'll definitely bring that up. But mine are actually like in the middle ground area where it's like a 1.5 tight end premium for my overall ranking, so that it gives you a little bit of both of the one quarterback or of the non-tight end premium versus the 2 tight end premium. But we will definitely bring that up. Think Charbonnet went too high, 812. No, I think that's probably fine value for him. Kendra went third. Yeah, 3 rounds later. Yeah, I mean, I think Kendra just went too low, not Charbonnet going too high. Because
I agree with
I
that.
took Kendra in the 12th round, which I think was pretty ridiculous.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm looking through some of your comments right now. I do not know how you're still able to chat. So nice little timeout for you there.
Yeah,
That is
literally.
unbelievably horrific
Yeah,
behavior.
beat it, whatever.
Beat it, pal.
Which receiver would you target with Pittman and a competitive window? Debo? Yeah, probably about Debo's in my rankings. Let me look who I have
Yeah.
between the two.
Yeah.
Pittman I have at 25. I mean, Calvin Ridley is 1 spot ahead of him, so that's probably the guy that I would target.
Yeah.
Chris Godwin, I have 2 spots behind him. I have Debo a couple spots ahead of him. You might not even be able to get to Debo personally. But yeah, the competitive receivers that I have rated around Pittman are Calvin Ridley, Chris Godwin, Marquise Brown, and DJ Moore. Those are the guys that are right around that range.
Would you take Amari Cooper plus?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, you could also go cheaper than that too. You could go Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, somebody like that, and just ask for more. Mike Williams.
Well, I think a reasonable deal that might be able to happen, especially who was it for Pittman? I can see somebody willing to give you like a Cooper or a McLaurin plus maybe even like a Tyler Lockett type. It would make sense for them. Obviously, they're getting more security long-term value-wise with Pittman. And then for you, you're getting 2 potentially higher scoring options in terms of just redraft with Lockett and Cooper. So I think that's the type of move that I look to a lot when I'm contending, is seeing if you can get, 2 valuable wide receivers or 2 high end point producing type of wide receivers for the price of one with some more market stability. So even if it's not Cooper, Cooper would be my option here. McLaurin would fit that billing. A guy like Deontay Johnson, I would still say I would like there as well, because he commands a lot of targets. And then maybe even like down to Mike Williams, I would say.
Like Mike Williams, I like
win now guy.
Even down tiering to Mike Williams and getting another like a Lockett type, or maybe even like just like a early second.
Aaron Jones,
like that. Yeah, Aaron Jones, somebody like that would make some sense. Brendan says, I'm starting a 10-team superflex half PPR and was wondering what the best roster size is. I mean, I traditionally like playing it. So superflex is 2, 2 running backs is 4, 3 wide receivers is 7, and then you have
tight end
3
8.
like. Tight end is 8, and then 2 flexes. Like start 10 to me seems pretty fair, pretty solid.
Did you count the super flex as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, start 10, start 11, I would say is actually
a start 10 is a 2 running back, 3 wide receiver super flex with 2 flexes.
Yeah. Whereas if it was the start 11, you'd probably just add an extra flex. So yeah. I like both of those personally. Like anything shorter than 10, I find is too shallow. Anything bigger than 11, I mean, you're starting like you're hoping to pick out an Isaiah Hodgins from the bargain bin for a weekly start.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
I was hoping for Kenneth, but he got sniped right before me. Yeah, he got Jacobs at 5'7", who was hoping Kenneth Walker. Yeah, 5'6", Kenneth Walker. It's actually really funny that Pionio drafted Barkley and Walker because I actually literally drafted those guys in the 4th and 5th round also in the most recent startup that we did.
Yep.
Randy says, hey guys, I'm in a super shallow 8-team PPR Superflex start 10 Dynasty League quarterbacks. Okay, lists everything here. Would you trade ETN / DJ Moore for Lamb? So both of them, I'm assuming, is you're trading both guys. In a super shallow league.
Give me
I mean,
Lamb
start
all
10
day.
isn't super shallow. I wouldn't call it super shallow, but
8-team though. 8-team, so it is shallow.
right. Okay, yeah, that is shallow. DJ
Lamb.
Moore and ETN. I mean, you already have Bijan and Gibbs.
Yeah.
And you'd have Jefferson, Lamb, London, Deontay, Addison. Yeah, I would probably do that.
I would probably do this in a 12-team start 11 league. So the fact that this is an 8-team start 10, just give me Lamb, man. Like I love Lamb's going to be a fringe top 5 wide receiver this year, and it's going to be glorious.
Yeah. Would you sell one of these running backs if you had all three to have less investment in the position? Bijan, Brees, and Gibbs.
Yes. I would sell one of them if I had all 3.
I honestly don't think I would. I don't think I need to. Those guys are literally like 3 of the top 4 dynasty running backs. I don't need to sell them.
100%, but that also bodes the question of I don't want to build around 3 high-end value running backs. So if you're telling me the cost equivalent of selling Brees or Gibbs or Bijan would be getting a wide receiver plus, like obviously most leagues aren't going to give you Chase or Jefferson like straight up for Bijan, but even CeeDee Lamb plus at that point from a market value standpoint. If you go down to Brees, maybe you can work a deal for the Jets. Maybe Garrett Wilson equals Brees plus like a second or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's so many alternative moves I would rather to spread the value of my team from straight running backs than just holding all 3. Because again, all 3 are going to be great, but the opportunity cost of holding all 3 is maybe replenishing your wide receiver core or maybe keeping yourself and getting a nice young quarterback. Like if Justin Fields was available for Bijan Robinson, I'm sure nobody would say no at that point.
Yeah, it would really depend on the rest of your team.
Yeah.
Because if the rest of your team is built solidly, then yeah, I'm just keeping those 3 running backs because they're 3 high, like there's not many running backs that are value insulated, but those 3 are 3 of them. So I would probably be fine with those guys. Jamie says, great show. Appreciate you guys. Need to catch the lives more often. Yeah, we're definitely, one thing I've realized, I mean, like this time of year, there isn't a ton to talk about. There's not a lot going on, but the fact that there was, concurrently 100 of you guys in here, like, watching us do a Superflex mock, that definitely shows that, that we can kind of just, do live streams instead of overcomplicating things and thinking of, complex video ideas at times. So really appreciate you guys for joining us.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your team at the 110? So at the 110, Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson, Tyreek Hill, I get it. It's a good value. Doesn't fit your team structure. So I probably would have went with Jackson Smith and Jigba at that point in time. But I mean, in a real league, maybe you can move off of him. I think personally, you may have so the rest of his, I guess it does kind of fit your team structure because you kind of made the determination to go competitive at that point. My question would be then Anthony Richardson doesn't fit your team structure.
And I'm assuming in this situation, see, the tough thing for you is even if you knew you were going to win now, like you probably can't pass on Richardson there because it's like, I prefer Kyler, but he doesn't really help you win now, assuming he misses some of the year. Prescott was gone. Bryce Young, it's really the candle of who do you prefer between Richardson or Young at that point because you're not counting on either giving you high-end year 1 point production. The only thing I will say is maybe if you added sort of like a win now guy at some point in the draft, maybe a Geno or Rodgers or someone like that, at that point, okay, you take Anthony Richardson. He's your high upside option off the bench, so you don't have to rely upon right away. But basically, you can kind of convince yourself that Geno will start the first 5 or 6 weeks of the year. And then when Anthony Richardson comes in, I'm not really even focused about his long-term value appeal. I'm more so looking at this hyper-athletic, Shane Steichen-led offense quarterback that by week 7 may be finding his groove as a top 5 to 8 overall fantasy quarterback. But like I said, if you were going to convince yourself of that, I probably would have gotten someone to hold the mantle at least for the first few weeks.
Yeah, that's probably what I would have went as well, especially knowing that we did get some good value on some of these guys going late in the draft where you drafted, I don't know, I'm looking on the board right now, where you drafted Joe Mixon. You could have gotten, I'm trying to think, you could have even just taken a shot on Purdy and just given yourself an extra bullet in the chamber for somebody to hit.
Yep. 100%. Traded Bijan in a late first for Burrow plus Garrett Wilson in a 1 quarterback. What are your thoughts here? So basically, if we're equating this, Bijan obviously is going to be the 103, I would assume, in the majority of startups.
Pick himself, though.
That's the thing. Garrett Wilson's going to be a top 6 pick. And then at that point, Although I prefer Bijan to Garrett Wilson, the late first, I would probably put Burrow as a mid first type of value.
I would say he's probably worth even a little bit more than that in a one quarterback.
Right.
Still,
So
I would
I
still
think,
take probably like anything other than a top 5 first over Burrow
yeah,
next year.
I think that's probably about a fair deal.
Yeah, give or take.
Give or take.
Yeah, we'll definitely get on that, Micah, for sure.
Sounds good.
10 team might go 11.
Don't
What
mind
would you be
that.
willing to give up to get into the first round of a startup for I mean, this is a
I
Danny question. You do
Yeah.
this all the time, so
Well, oddly enough, I actually did a move like this recently in the startup that we did. So what exactly was the deal? I mean, I could check it right now. It was a no flocking. The trades.
I mean, I did want to no flocking too, actually. I wasn't in the first round, but I got Bryce at the mid second. I traded up for because I was picking 1-1 in that league, and I had Josh Allen. And then I was like, you know what? I need to move up and get my second quarterback. I think I ended up giving up like my 3rd round startup pick and like my 5th round startup pick or something for the 205. And then I think I may have gotten one later. I think I got like a 9th rounder or something like that.
I found it, by the way. So I traded. I believe it was the 107 I traded up for Lamar. You can
Something like
double
that,
check
yeah.
that. I traded up to about the 107, let's just say for East's sake. Gave up the 606, or sorry, I got the 107 and the 606 in exchange for my second, which was the 210, my second 210, my 4th 410, and a 2024 first round pick, which I project to be late.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way you looked at that was the 4th and the 6th, they're not extremely different in value. You give up the 210 and the first to move up for a stud quarterback. So realistically, you gave up like Jalen Waddle in a first, or St. Brown, Olave, whatever, and a first to go up for Lamar. Yeah. So I would say, I mean, I'm willing to give up a decent amount. If you're going up for another quarterback one, but you got to be careful. If you're not an experienced dynasty player, I maybe wouldn't recommend doing it because you might not be able to evaluate your picks correctly and know where the tier breaks are and that kind of thing. So I would say be careful, but if you can do it, I'm willing to give up my future first. If you're coming from like the 3rd round or something like that to come up and get a first round, come up and get a top quarterback, because when we don't like giving up our future first in startups, but if we are going to do it, like doing it for a stud quarterback is definitely more than a stomachable move to make. So
12 team superflex 1.2.
Lawrence, Diggs, Ridley, mid 3rd, mid 4th, or Herbert, Higgins, McBride, late 2nd, mid 2nd. Okay, who wins the trade?
So I'd rather Herbert over Lawrence,
but they're like literally dead even to me, in my opinion.
I would rather Higgins than Diggs.
Yeah.
So that's just a question of, because I think McBride in the 2s, like I would rather Ridley in the 3s, but I also think that the slight difference I have between Herbert and Higgins outweighs the difference between Ridley in the 3s versus McBride in the 2s, I would say.
Yeah, I think I like the Herbert side slightly.
Same. That's a pretty good deal, though. I can see like top side maybe wants to try to compete, so they downgrade a little bit at quarterback. They downgrade in terms of valuation on the market at wide receiver, I would say, from Higgins to Diggs, but they also get a production boost going from Higgins to Diggs, and then obviously get a Ridley on top. I think this is honestly a fair deal both ways. Pure value, like I said, Herbert side, like Corey said as well. But if you're winning and you want to make the Lawrence deal, I don't think that's bad.
Agreed. I think if I was the contender and the rebuilder in either side of the trade, I think I would be more satisfied as the contender, though. Getting Diggs and Ridley would be massive. I think that would be really, really helpful for my team. Okay, so we're going to close out the stream at the end. Pretty much there's a couple more questions here. Let's see. Got here late. Yeah, no worries there. Just a chance to do a competitive mock draft with you. Bring people in case we fiends. Or friends. I don't know if that's supposed to say friends. I don't understand drafting Kelsey or Waller ahead of Kincaid in a dynasty startup. Kelsey, yeah, I understand because he's so fucking valuable. I would definitely still take Kelsey over Kincaid in a startup. Kincaid, yeah, man, he could really make people look stupid for saying that he was like not worth the dynasty tight end 6 or 7 or wherever he's going right now. But at the same time, he's still a rookie tight end, man. Like we don't exactly know how they're going to play things out. He has a chance to accumulate a ton of value. So I think it's kind of warranted where people are going a little overboard with him right now. It's almost like a landing spot based version of Kyle Pitts. We're like, yeah, dude, a Buffalo Bills starting tight end, if he's a great player, even if he's like Pat Freiermuth, he's going to be a stud for Josh Allen led offense. I understand it. Kelsey, you need to take over him because he has so much inherent value from a redraft perspective.
Yeah.
But Waller, I mean, there's no way I would take Waller over
Yeah.
over Kincaid in
Yeah.
Dynasty.
Waller. Yeah. He might be hit
He
from
might.
being
You're right about that. He might have no value very soon. If he doesn't work out with New York, it would not shock me. I think there's a possibility he might just be toast, and his knees and his hamstrings are all made of jello. So,
Yeah.
we are gonna close this one out. Thank you guys for joining us the last hour and a half or so.
Appreciate you guys.
Like I said at the beginning of the stream, I slept in a tent last night, so I'm fucking exhausted at this moment. I'm gonna do my best to get the wide receiver 2024 top 10s on the site tomorrow. So if you guys have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, on our site, we have top 10 quarterback rankings and running back rankings for 2024 with film breakdowns on each of the top 5. So I broke down, film on Caleb Williams, Drake May, Raheem Sanders, Trey Benson, all these like top running backs and top quarterbacks already. I'm doing the wide receiver version. Ideally, I was going to plan to do it for tomorrow, but because I was away all weekend, I'm probably not going to get it all done today. So tomorrow night or Tuesday is probably when that will be live. So Marvin Harrison breakdown, Emeka Egbuka breakdown, Malik Neighbors breakdown, all that stuff will be in there. Top 10 receivers for 2024 will be live on the site. And of course, if you do not have a site subscription, you can get one for 2 days for free to check out those videos by using promo code FSE, 30% off. And again, we still have the promo running. If you guys want to do a consult with either of us, signing up annually will not only get you 6 months for free, it will also get you a consultation for free as well. So definitely make sure to check all that stuff out. That'll be linked down below in the description if you want to check it out. And of course, check out Underdog as well and use code FSE over there. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.